Welcome to episode 88 of Rubbish Talk with me, Alasdair Meldrum.
And myself, Jane Bond.
And this week we're going to look at the waste journey of glass. So we're coming up to Christmas, lots of wine and beer bottles getting disposed of over Christmas season. So we're going to look through what happens to glass and how it gets recycled in the UK. So, and before that, Jane, what news have we got?
Well, the one we've been talking about, this Kidlington rubbish, and do you know, it's quite interesting. Everyone I speak to has actually heard about it, even whether they're in the waste industry or not. There was a inquiry, House of Lords committee. It's gone all the way up to the House of Lords now. The chair has said she was alarmed that the Environment Agency did not notify it about a number of illegal waste sites. So it sounds like it disclosed a few, but not all of them. And she was saying that it did not include the mountain of waste in Kidlington, Oxfordshire, which is obviously the one that's obviously been in the news, as well as sites in Wigan and Worcestershire. So yeah, so she's kind of having a bit of a disappointed that these sites were not deemed necessary to bring to the committee's attention, she said. So yeah.
It does seem to have got the coverage, that particular site, for whatever reason.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because on that website there's a bit of a timeline between when it was originally reported and then what happened from there when the BBC got involved, which is obviously why it kind of escalated, and how long it took between the initial visit by the Environment Agency to actually the amount of waste put on the site in total.
It's just mad when you look at the figures in terms of disposal costs to clean the sites up. You know, they're going to struggle for budget to do them because it's going to cost them, tens to hundreds of thousands of pounds to actually clear a site. So, yeah.
And basically what she's saying, that there may be other sites with similar large and environmental damage that hasn't been disclosed or disclosed to the House of Lords, but again, disclosed, identified, found. I mean, race crime, we've talked about this a lot of times, big business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the one I've got, I spotted, and this was from Suez Group, and it was actually abroad, I think, rather than the UK, but no, it was abroad. It was in France. So one of the things, I had the Switch, the Safety and Health and Education Training Competence Group that operates in Scotland. I had the AGM last week, and one of the things that was talked about was this issue with the automatic bin lifts in the back of the bin lorries. So the challenge with them is when they're on automatic mode, they can lift operators or members of the public into the back of the bin lorry, and then on occasion they've been crushed and killed. All the bin lorries in the UK are currently being fitted to try and correct that and reduce the risk of that happening. It's only a temporary fix, and there's sort of new technology coming in which detects whether it's a bin or a human to stop people getting lifted in. But this was pictures of, and we'll include these in the show notes, it was pictures of bin lorry where there was a lighting system in the back, and it put a sort of red line behind the back of the bin lorry, whether they were loading or driving. So it was sort of, I suppose to highlight it, I suppose it would work in the dark, but it's not particularly effective in the daylight. So it's not a solution to the problem, but it's just highlighting the issue. I quite like that, the pictures that were shared. So yeah.
I think how to tell the difference between a bin and a human being, you kind of think it should be obvious, but
Yeah, well, it's not. It is not. That's the problem. And sometimes feel sorry when you see a refuse collection crew picking up bins in a busy street because they've got pedestrians going by the back of it and so on. So there is a real issue with that. And I think there are organisations out there with bin lorries that aren't aware of the problem and the fact they need to get these bin lifts retrofitted to try and at least make them a little bit safer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Next one I've got is a report from Zero Waste Scotland, which is, again, very current. We're just so totally on the ball here. That came out at the beginning of December, and it's saying it's all about textiles. So there's a report. Mind you, saying that, it does say our research findings reveal that in 2023 alone. So we are 2 years out, but hey, it's it's better than the previous stuff, I guess. So it's actually basically saying, there's lots of stats in this, so I'm going to read it. So Scotland imported around 240,000 tonnes of textiles from raw fibres to finished clothing, but around 405,000 tonnes of textiles pass through the Scottish retail and wholesale. So we're selling 405,000 tonnes of textiles every year, which is a fair quantity, really. Nothing to do with me, because
Absolutely nothing to do with me.
no, me neither. So it's obviously somebody else is buying all this stuff, not me. And and like it says, it's a vital part of the economy. Fair enough. The same data shows that almost a third of these materials are thrown away, right? Either during production or after use. So it says here 5%, so that's 19,000 tonnes. That's still a lot of waste, is lost before it even reaches the consumer. So it's lost in, I don't know, when it's been manufactured or when it's been imported over and it's got holes in or whatever. So before we even start, we've got 19,000 tonnes. Then we have 112,000 tonnes, which is discarded by people. You wear it once. What do? You throw it away because you can't bother to put it in the washing machine. They only cost £2.50 down in Primark anyway. And then I did look at it, and it did say over half of Scotland textiles, 53%, are given new life through reuse or recycling. So I was thinking, I suppose that's not too bad. But then you actually look at where it is actually used, and over half of that, like 2/3 of that, is shipped overseas. So it's not just made up of, so it's not just recycled and reused in the UK. It's recycled and reused or shipped over, and we don't know whether it's recycled or reused in other countries or not. But I always tell this story because I have to, because it shocked me. We were doing, as Albion, we do lots of waste composition analysis study, and we were doing waste composition on a sort of black bag waste from waste recycling centres, and we were looking through it like you do to see whether what's been put in these bags. And we opened them up, and there must have been at least three bags of clothes which still had tags on. So not only had they're not being taken back to the shop because either they didn't fit or whatever, or they had been put into a charity shop or given to somebody else, but they've just been thrown away. And thinking of it, is that from somebody, a homeowner who just didn't want it, or is it actually from a shop that couldn't sell it? I've only just thought about that now. But anyway, I was shocked. I absolutely shocked. I mean, I'm thinking, there's no way I would throw something away that hadn't even used it.
Commercial waste finding its way into household waste recycling centre, Jane. That would never happen.
Possibly comment. But yeah, that kind of did actually shock me, that people could actually throw clothes away that they hadn't even taken the tags off, and never mind not worn. So yes, there's still quite a lot we need to do in terms of textile recycling, and and there's always stuff on fast fashion, and the fact that it's fashion's cheap. You've got a lot of online retailers and stuff that you can buy stuff really cheaply, but then again you've got all the big outlets like eBay and Vinted and Depop that are where you can sell your old clothes and get money for them.
The total sideline here, Jane, but I was reading something the other day about, so seemingly people that sell a lot of stuff in Vinted are getting concerned because HMRC, if you sell more than, I think it's just over £1,000 worth of stuff, HMRC potentially comes after you, but seemingly that only applies to if you sell your own stuff and you're selling it for less than the retail value, there's no tax ever applicable. So you could sell £5,000 worth of stuff from your own house. It's only where you're buying stuff in specifically to resell the stuff that you're actually they're coming after you. So you do need to give, if you do over £1,000, you do need to give them your national insurance number or something. You do need to confirm, but they can only, the only time you're due tax is if you're actually buying in stuff in bulk, for example, and selling it off on, basically you're acting as a retailer. So. Yeah, I never knew that.
No, I'm a real hoarder, so I'm not very good at throwing things away.
Keep selling in Vinted, is what I'm told. Keep selling in Vinted. I've been meaning to, because I've got a couple of pairs of trainers that are brand new that are in the box that I should really just sell, and because I'm not going to I'm not going to wear them.
Why don't you wear them, Alistair? What did you buy them for if you're not going to wear
Because
them?
I've got, I don't buy many clothes, but I do have quite a few pairs of running shoes. That should be probably a Christmas quiz question as to how many pairs of running shoes I've actually got.
Okay. Right. Yeah, that should be. Yeah. Mia, add that on to the Christmas quiz. Right. Anyway, what else have we got?
Well, and going back to the textiles, what the reason Zero Waste Scotland have done this report is that although textiles only make up 3.5% of household waste by weight, it accounts for a fifth of the climate change impacts of the actual waste. So it's got a really big climate impact.
Yeah.
So, but I think the key here is to be like me and don't buy the clothes in the first place, and then you'll not produce a waste, and you'll not need to reuse them or recycle them. But I was coming home from the Christmas lunch on Friday, and they said to be on Christmas lunch, and I did get triggered by somebody's LinkedIn post because I had big headlines saying that Zero Waste Scotland show great leadership in doing this report, and I'm like, really? Is writing a report about textiles showing leadership? Leadership's maybe actually making great progress in recycling. More than 50% of the textiles in Scotland are putting some sort of fancy system in. But one of the things, if you read through, I've not read through the whole report, but one of the things that they have done is they've looked at modelling a household collection for textiles, small wee and batteries. And that sort of links in back to our waste journey episode we did last week on small wee and batteries. So that they are looking at how you can provide that collection for households to try and capture the textiles, the small wee and the batteries.
When you said modelling collections for textiles, I was thinking, oh, right, we're going to get a catwalk on for a charity shop and sell.
No.
So, yeah, sorry.
I mean, financial model, I think.
Okay.
But the one thing I never saw in any of the materials was back to this producer having some sort of responsibility. So producers are putting, what did you say, 405,000 tonnes of textiles onto the market. Where's their responsibility in this? They need to start stepping up and taking a bit of responsibility. So I think possibly we should be doing a waste journey on textiles, Jane, or we could do with an expert. If there's any experts out there on textiles, love to chat to you. So there's a plea for an episode for 2026. That's quite scary. An episode for 2026. How did we get to the end of 2025?
We just chatted our way through 2025, Alasdair, I think. That's what we've done. Yeah, so I have, this is interesting, and actually quite scary. There was a LinkedIn post from Peter Moody, who is the chief exec of Gap Group North East, and we interviewed, who was it from Gap Group?
Nigel Tomlinson, episode 39.
Yeah, we interviewed somebody from there as well. So it's interesting. And he's saying, over the weekend, our team on the small mixed wee pre-sort line at the Gap Group discovered 64 live rounds of explosives ammunition discarded with their electrical waste. Oh my goodness, can you imagine, not only finding, well done for them finding it and it not getting any further than that, but crikey, that is scary. I mean, how on earth do people think that that's the right thing to do?
It's mad. I've seen a few posts recently about there's these, I think we've talked about before, these nitrogen oxide compressed for this. I was going to say inflatable cream, but that's not the right word. The cream the caterers use, or the gas they use for putting air in things. So there's that, and another thing the waste to energy plants have a real problem is gas canisters, and they go pop inside the plant. So. Our plea is put stuff in the right place. That's our only suggestion.
Can you imagine the pop that would have gone 64 round lives of ammunition? That would have blown I don't know, was it blown the plant apart or whatever?
And talking about putting things in the right place, there's a story about a fly tipper caught in a CCTV dressed in a dinosaur costume. So this was down in Southend-on-Sea. Now, it looks like, I think it's been done as a bit of a prank. So somebody in a purple blow-up dinosaur costume walks across the road, drops 2 bags beside this bin, and then walks to the other side of the road and does a wee circle around the lamppost and then walks off. And I think they've done it on purpose to get a wee film, because they know somebody's got a camera looking at the bins. But it did get headline ITV News for their things. So I suppose is it good publicity or bad publicity for the waste sector, Jane?
Well, I mean, it shouldn't be dumped where it should have been dumped. And, I think it's just making a mockery of it, to be honest. I mean, yeah, it's funny, blah, 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 but, it's just making a bit of a mockery of dumping your waste in the wrong place. Totally.
Absolutely.
But
So I think that's all our news for this week. Now on to our waste journey, where we're going to talk all things glass. And you're the expert in glass, Jane, because you've been round the OI factory that makes glass. So I'm relying on you for this one.
Well, I can do it up to a point, but yeah, okay. So glass. Why does glass recycling matter? So you look in your waste recycling, and we've got glass. We use those glass jars, glass bottles. Obviously not too many bottles of wine in my bin, honest. So much stuff that's made out of glass, and it can support circular economy, as in we can recycle it, melt it down, make it into more bottles, more jars, and that kind of thing. So, that is the best thing to be able to do with our glass. And often that's why we try and separate the glass colours. Often you see recycling centres or waste recycling centres will actually have bins for different colours, because then it's easier to recover and recycle. But again, even if it is coloured glass, or if it gets caught up, we can still collect it, but it doesn't get recycled quite as well as putting it into another bottle of wine. It kind of gets crushed up as sand. We crush it up in sand and use it as a building material, or sometimes they'll sort of crush it and kind of tumble it and make it into nice aggregate and stuff like that, make it look nice, and you can use it as decorative glass, which does look very pretty. And at least it's being used. At least it's not being put into a landfill, because obviously, or into an energy from waste facility, because glass obviously doesn't burn, unless you really heat it at high temperatures, and then it melts. But we'll talk about that in a bit.
Yeah. So in terms of how glass recycling works in Scotland, so councils will have a kerbside bin. So South Ayrshire Council, lucky enough to have a purple lidded bin that goes out, I think every 6 weeks. The council come on along and collect it. But before we had that, we would take the glass to bring sites, bottle banks, household waste recycling centre sites. So in the past, we used to have lots of bottle banks, usually situated in supermarket car parks or near supermarkets. But because we've now got a kerbside collection, I actually don't know where my local bottle bank is. I'm not even sure where it is, but so some places do. I always remember taking the kids to take the bottles, but the kids like dropping them from a great height and hearing them smashed. But 9 times out of 10, they would turn the bottle upside down and get some red wine over their clothes and from the dregs of the bottles. And I think one of the important thing about, so in terms of recycling, is glass bottles and glass jars are really what they're looking at. And then some glass from toiletries and so on can be included. But what you're not allowed to put in, and this is something that often confuses people, is window glass, mirrors, Pyrex cooking dishes, drinking glasses, light bulbs, ceramics and so on, because they're basically a different type of glass and it melts at a different temperature. So in terms of the recycling industry, they're only interested in bottles and jars, basically. And brief summary in terms of what's happening, Jane, you mentioned that it gets sorted by colour. Interesting enough, I looked at Let's Recycle, which does the prices for recycling, and interestingly, all the prices were pretty much the same. So brown, was £9 to £35 a tonne, clear was £9 to £36 a tonne, green was £7 to £38 a tonne, and mixed was £6 to £38 a tonne. So if I was a council, I'd be saying, let's just collect mixed because we're getting the same price for it.
Yeah, well, fair enough. And I suppose the thing is, you collect a mix, and it can be sorted, can't it?
It can be.
As a facility, yeah.
So the big plant, one of the big plants in Scotland is at Newhouse, and it used to be run by Viridor. taken over by a company called Sibelco. And I did do a bit of Googling on their site this morning, and it's a worldwide company. I mean, you have to search down from the category I ended up going to was Europe and Middle East.
Oh,
and then
that's a wide area.
I eventually worked my way down to the Newhouse site. And in fairness, there's hardly any information on the Newhouse site about what it does. But I believe that plant can sort into different colours and segregate the waste. And I think it can take what we call glass from material recycling facilities. So where councils are commingling glass waste within the recycle it, that's often a bit of a dirty waste stream. So they can sort and tidy. So in terms of the actual recycling process, collect the glass will then be sorted often by colour, and that'll be by light and so on. So it'll be all automated. It's cleaned, it's crushed into colour, and then it's sent for reprocessing. I'm saying here, it says here, proper sorting helps maximise the quality of recycled glass, which is why it does ultimately need separated into its different colour schemes. But you, Jane, you've had the pleasure of going round the OI glass factory, which is Stirling, I think, and they actually
manager, Alloa.
They manufacture glass from. Do they do it from virgin materials, or do they recycle content as well?
They have a recycled content, so they do take recycled content in there, and then it's put into the mix, and then put into some massive furnaces, and it's heated up. And then they've got quite a strong, there's flue gases and all this sort of stuff because it's heated up so much. So all of that's checked and everything like that. And then it comes out the other end, and it's just, I tell you what, it's absolutely fascinating. Walking around, the glass is coming out like liquid, and it comes out, well, I suppose it is because it's all melted. It comes out and it kind of drops in like globules, and these globules kind of come out and then just form a bottle. And I've got
like magic.
It is. And I've got these videos, well, not videos, but some wee photos of it. And it was, and then they go down the lines and people check them and make sure, there's checking facilities to make sure all these bottles are okay. But the thing is, they can only really add a certain amount of recycle because when new bottles are made, you're adding some chemicals and stuff in to make it clear or make it green or make it blue or make it brown or whatever. So when it comes to actually using that, there's still those sort of chemicals in that glass. So there's only a certain amount they can use until the sort of emissions are increasing. And I think the balance is having the right amount of recyclables that comes in and it gets treated with the gases or the emissions produced. And it's sort of chicken and the egg. The more the more recycled product you use, the potential is the more you're increasing in your emissions, your emissions gases. So it's that balance between what we can bring in and what you can recycle. But yeah, I tell you, fascinating.
Yeah,
amazing.
Good.
Stats. I get to read out all the numbers again. So I've got to look at the numbers because it's one of those things, and number blindness. Scotland produced at least 207,000 tonnes of glass waste in 2023. Now, back to what we were talking about in our news, we produce more textiles, or we sell more textiles than we sell glass.
That's actually quite mad, Jane, when you think of how much beer and wine's drunk.
Yeah, I know. So of that, about 131,000 tonnes is recycled. So 99,000 tonnes processed domestically for recycling, and then the rest of that is exported. So if we actually sorted and everything like that, sorted everything out, we could have quite a volume of glass available for recycling if we could sort that out from the residual waste. So there is some capacity for recycling glass within Scotland, but again, it's that processing, making sure we've got the right processing facilities that can do that. So, and I think, like you said, Alasdair, is your glass collected separately in East Ayrshire? Yeah, because mine isn't.
Yeah. No, it's a separate bin.
Because mine's collected with my cans, and cans and bottles are all collected in one container.
So what have you got? cans, plastic and glass.
Yeah, cans,
Yeah.
plastic and glass all in the one container.
Yeah.
So
The challenge for a reprocessor is splitting that into clean waste streams. It's probably not so bad for the glass. The glass is probably okay, but certainly the plastic manufacturers and the metal manufacturers, the last thing they want is a few broken bottles in their load.
Yes,
so it does,
and I think that's the issue.
It devalues the value of the product. Yeah.
Yeah. So I suppose the moral of the story there is we've got more glass that we can pull out of our domestic waste for recycling.
1,000 tons, Jane. That's a lot of glass that we're missing.
Yeah, it is.
It's a lot of glass.
It's definitely a lot more. I suppose you can't. It's one of those things that you've got to throw it away. You can't recycle it. As in you can't sell it on eBay or Vinted, can you really? I tell you what though, people do make them into lamp things, don't they? Or put lights inside them and make them look pretty, but I don't know.
Candle holder from your student days, Jane.
No, that's going back a while.
I'll tell you what, my mum used to make lots of raspberry and strawberry jam, and every time you had a jar of beetroot or whatever, that was collected and it was reused on a regular basis.
Perfect.
And then she discovered I'm getting really techie here, so if you buy a jar of beetroot or something, it'll have a metal lid, and that's perfect for jam, because when you put the jam in warm and then put the lid on it, it almost creates a vacuum. But she did a few years use coffee jars, and coffee jars quite often have a plastic lid, and they've got a little cardboard seal on the top of the lid, and if she used them, then the jam would go mouldy really quickly.
Well, there you go then.
There you go.
Yeah,
Bet you
don't
never
use
knew that.
coffee, use beetroot jars.
So there's how you reuse jars. But thinking about reuse, if you go to some countries in Europe, all the beer needs to be sold in reusable bottles, and it's the same bottles that go around all the different beer producers. So whether it's a bottle of Heineken or Beck's or whatever, they've all got to use the same bottles and reuse them. So they wash the labels off and reuse it. And that's way more sustainable than recycling the glass.
Well, we used to do that with milk bottles, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
The milkman used to come back, take the milk bottles away, clean them, and put the milk back in again.
Yeah. So if we want to be industry leaders, if we want to be worldwide leaders, then maybe we should be changing the focus from actually recycling the glass to actually forcing the companies that produce it to reuse it. So there you go.
Good point.
Anyway, I suppose we can't talk about glass without talking about deposit return scheme.
Oof.
So
dirty word.
The initial deposit return scheme, and I still don't know what has happened with the court case in Scotland. I need to do a bit of digging actually with the Biffa court case, but that's probably for another episode. So the initial plan was in Scotland, it was going to include plastic bottles, metal cans and glass bottles, and it was going to be a 20 pence return. That obviously got shelved for various reasons, but Scotland is now part of the UK scheme, and that's going to not include glass. But Wales, out of the four nations, Wales has decided their scheme is going to include glass. And I think the reason for not including glass, I believe, is it'll add a bit of the complexity to the scheme, the heavier weight, the risk of breakages, the need for safe storage and transport, extra handling burden on retail and return points and so on. I remember when they were looking at introducing the DRS in Scotland, I did get asked specifically about collection of glass, because what was going to happen was this was going to be collected at shops and so on. It was probably going to be collected in plastic bags. They never broke. Then you potential risk of injuries to staff and so on. So there is a collection risk associated with collection glass if it's not in bins. So it'll be interesting how the whole glass or no glass, including the DRS, breaks out, and it'll be interesting how Wales manages to do it as a bit of an outlier. I think we've talked about this before. Major producers don't just prepare stuff for resale in Scotland, they prepare stuff for resale in the UK. So they'll probably need to label up separately for Wales and so on.
Yeah, no. Yes, it would be interesting to see how they do that. So will we collect glass separately, or will they have to go and put it into the recycling centres? So
in Scotland, it'll not be included in DRS, therefore you're still need your collection system. So, or your bottle banks and so on.
Yeah, and I suppose thing with it is we still need to recycle it somehow, whether it's put into the bottle bags or it's put into your curbside collection. Again, it'd be interesting to see what councils do their curbside collection. And if we can the best thing to do is separate your glass, clean it first, because there's nothing worse than getting your waste when it's all covered in jam, and God knows what else from the glass bottles. And also drink your wine. Don't just put the half a bottle of wine into a recycling container, because not only does total waste of that wine, it attracts all wasps and everything else. So we put them in our curbside, we clean them, wash them, segregate them if we need to. But what we don't do is we don't put our windows in there, or our Pyrex containers, or our mirrors. And the other thing is as well is glasses, like drinks glasses. Do they go in, Alasdair, or not?
No,
No.
they're the same. They're
Yeah.
classified the same as Pyrex and so on.
Yeah, so I think that's quite important, that as well, isn't it? To make sure it doesn't spoil the entire container of glass, that you're actually putting in the right stuff into the right place. But hopefully local authorities will let us know who's collecting what and where to put him.
Absolutely. I'll still have my purple lidded bin, I think, Jane, for a while yet. Now, I was looking, I did a wee bit digging about the actual carbon dioxide savings from recycling glass. And what was quite interesting, so it was reuse is top. So kilograms of carbon dioxide per tonne of glass, it was 620. And then we had recycle in a closed loop, as in glass bottle going to a glass bottle at 314. And then other uses, which I knew about some of them, but I wasn't aware. So glass fibre is one use, and that's quite a good use in terms of carbon dioxide reduction. And then shot blast, aggregate, and filtration. Now, filtration was negative. So this is where you crush up glass and use it as a filter media. And it was actually a negative. So this is sort of what would be classified as a low, what do we call it? A low value recycling route. But interestingly, a filtration is really crushed glass is actually really, really good as a filtration media. So it's used in sewage treatment works and water treatment works and so on. And it's good because it requires a lot less media, anything between 15 and 25% less media. You don't need to backwash it as often, so it uses less energy. It's much less prone to fouling with bacterial growth. Due to the smoother surfaces, and that leads to lower chemical usage and longer media file. And I remember this was, particularly in Scotland, this was a guy called Howard Dryden, who I've mentioned before, who's living in a yacht someplace in the far off world, but he posts lots of stuff about not so much climate change issues. His view is it's not carbon dioxide that's a big issue, it's the contamination of the global oceans that are going to cause the big sort of climate emergency. But he did a huge amount of work in terms of introducing glass into it. So lots of good benefits. It's this, if you look at something, if you look at it from the point of view of carbon dioxide, it's not very good. But if you look at it in terms of improving water quality and so on, and reuse of a material, it is really good. So it's one of these things that, there's always two parts to the story, if you like.
Yeah, it does seem a bit weird that there's lots of benefits and then it's a negative CO2 impact, which seems a bit strange. Yeah, so I guess we were talking earlier about what's a good thing to do with these glass bottles, and making sure that's sorted, but also potentially, like you were saying, in Europe, where you can actually reuse those bottles over and over again, and so you don't even have to melt them all down and use all that energy to do that. You're actually using them. And I suppose there's always the other things is, again, if you put them in your recycling bin, at least they're in there and they're not littering open spaces. Oh, do you know what? The amount of stuff you see, right, round our way, there's the end of term and all that sort of stuff. All the kids decide that they're going up to the reservoir and they're going up there and having a few drinks, like they do. They walk up there with their bottles of, cheap vodka and God knows what else. And then what do? They leave their cheap bottles of vodka there, and it smashes on the ground. You've got litter, you've got issues with, animals and stuff up there causing problems. And you think, again, you've taken it up there, bring it back. And I remember one time, I'm going off on quite a tangent here, actually,
It's
COVID.
almost sounding like a rant here, Jane.
Well, yeah, going off in COVID, right? It was actually interesting because there was police actually at the bottom of this area, and they were stopping people going up there with their drinks who were obviously underage. And I walked up there, and they looked at me and went, "No, I don't think you're underage. You can carry on. We won't check your bag." It's like, all right, okay. So yeah. But anyway,
my confession here, Jane, is during COVID I was stopped twice by the police for drinking in a public space. And seemingly, you're not allowed to drink in a public. It was a park, and we had a reason to be there, but unknown to me, we weren't allowed to be drinking in that park. But then we started talking to the police, and we realised that it was a running thing we'd been doing. We realised the police had their kids at ERC Forth, and they let us. They moved on and left us in peace. But talking about glass, I know the gym I go to has got a pool and a sauna and so on, and they're absolutely really hard on people not taking glass bottles into the pool side. And also,
absolutely.
Well, the other thing they're really strict on is not taking phones in, because obviously it's glass screen. Because if they get a broken phone, then they've got broken glass, which causes them a hell of a problem. So, yeah, there is a big littering issue with glass, and I think that's why Scotland was trying to include glass in the DRS in the first place. But yeah, so I suppose the questions from us is going forward, should glass be included in the DRS or not? I think the decision's been made to a certain extent. I think, it might come in at a later date. And one of the challenges with that is, I think the producers, their argument is, if you force glass into the system, then there's possibly a bigger shift to plastic packaging, which has its own challenges. And then in terms of the actual collection system, as we've just highlighted, my household, I've got a separate bin collection. Jane, you're allowed to put it in your mixed recyclate, whereas other people don't actually have that, and they've got to take it to supermarkets or household waste recycling sites. So it's just how accessible we make it for people.
Yeah.
On the whole, I was actually surprised. I always thought that glass recycling I thought we were higher up the percentage in terms of amount of glass. I always thought it was nearer 90% that we're actually recovering the bulk of the glass, but obviously we're not. Obviously we've still got some way to go. So
yeah, I think, on pubs and clubs and stuff, I think they do quite well, because obviously they've got a lot of glass bottles and things like that, but it's probably more domestic households and, what happens there, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, I think that's anything else we've got to all done in glass. We managed to bluff our way through that one, Jane. I think.
Yeah.
Until somebody catches us out and said, "You'd said that wrong."
There's probably like 26 different types of glass, and we kind of just haven't gone through each individual one. But basically, you put it in your recycling, it gets recycled. Hopefully, some of it goes to glass manufacturer again, some of it goes to aggregate, but at least it goes somewhere, and not in the parks and gardens where people can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just littering. Back to littering again.
Yep. Okay.
So, any rants this time, Alasdair?
I've always got a rant, Jane. Always got a rant. My rant in the run up to Christmas.
Oh,
so you know that way, if you go to a party and you're not drinking, particularly in Scotland, you get asked about 50 million times why you're not drinking, and you get that quite often. But my view is the overconsumption that it runs up to Christmas is the same sort of vein. So if you suggest to people they're just buying tat that they're going to throw out in the first or second week of January, you're viewed as a party pooper. And I just think we should be a bit more thoughtful about what we buy and what we consume at this time of year, because I think there's lots of purchases that in reality
unnecessary purchases
don't really need made. So that's it's not really a rant, that's just my plea.
It's, what was it, a thought?
Thought for the day.
Food for thought.
Thought for the day, yes. I think it's called.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. My Christmas tat comes out every year, even though it's looking more and more tatty each year. But
we were at the Christmas lunch last week. We were just trying to discuss the pros and cons of which is more environmentally sustainable, a real tree or an artificial tree. My tree went up at the weekend there, and I would think it's well over 20 years old. As you say, it's looking slightly slimmer and less green to it than it probably did 20 years ago, but it still, once it's up, it still looks the part. So
yeah, once you cover it with baubles, you're sorted.
yeah, absolutely.
Nobody can see it anyway.
So there you go. So my plea to finish this one is don't buy tat.
Okay.
Is that a good plan?
Yeah,
I think
that's a
good
fine plan. Whether anybody will take any notice is a different matter, Alasdair. But yeah,
that's just to save me having to buy any presents. I think that's
buy useful presents.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
So that's us for this week. Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode. See you again next Thursday at 4 p.m. Don't forget to follow, share with friends, and send us your feedback at hello@rubbishtalk.co.uk.